Meanwhile, Facebook has come under fire with U.S. lawmakers calling on the tech giant's founder Mark Zuckerberg to testify against the Congress. Mr. Zuckerberg has expressed deep regret about the situation and said that he would not object to further regulations on the social network. According to reports, Facebook became aware of Cambridge Analytica's access to personal data back in 2015, after which it demanded that the acquired information be deleted. While the firm assured the tech giant that its requirements have been fulfilled, Facebook recently learned that the data has not been completely destroyed.
And to discuss this in further detail, we're joined live by Curran, Professor of Cybersecurity, Faculty of Computing and Engineering. And thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Angela.
And can you tell us what you think of these last revelations about the nature of the data collection process by Facebook?
I think geeks have known for a while that generally when you have a product such as Facebook where we don't pay for it, that of course that really it's our information about us is what Facebook make their money off. And of course they're one of the largest ad revenue collectors, on the online, and this year they're expected to do 40 billion in revenue in ads. And of course, the more information they have about us, the more that they can sell ads to third parties, because of course that they have so much information that they can tell who we are, what we do. There's so much information about us. When it comes to advertisers advertising on Facebook, there's about 120, 150 markers that they have on us, from our location, our gender, our age, the price of our property. They really collect an awful lot. But what really has shocked a lot of people is the fact that when they downloaded the Facebook Messenger app, especially in Android phones last year, in the last few years, that it collected obviously the contacts that people were more or less forced, because of the way the app opened up on the phone, that they were forced to upload their contacts. So, of course, the contacts were stored, but the fact is that they were logging the calls that people made, the duration of the calls, of course, who they were made to, and also the SMS text messages are stored on the platform. So a lot of people were really shocked to find that Facebook had actually really trolled through people's phone contacts, the phone messages, and the text messages.
Right. And now when you download that Messenger app, and I have an Android phone, so I've noticed that they also ask you if they can access your photos and, video, your camera. So basically that you have given them permission to record you. Is that correct? I mean, you're thinking that this is just so you can share pictures, right? But does that in fact give them the possibility of recording you?
It gives them the messages, of course, because you have clicked onto the actual allowing the contacts to be shared, and of course photos and everything. But people are aware that the photos are stored there, really, and this is the problem with modern companies like Facebook, the giants and the Googles. And it's not just Facebook who are collecting a lot of information on us. All the other giants are doing it too, and a lot of sites that we visit pass on our details to third parties as well. Ad brokers, it's not uncommon for websites to make 25% of the revenue by passing on the details of our requests to their site, to third-party ad brokers, which are becoming huge in the world of advertising as well. It's the fact that it's really not clear that we really need terms and conditions to be made more obvious to us, to spell it out. Like Apple do it quite well. Apple are quite good at keeping our information private and also making it obvious to us what we're sharing. But what we need is more transparency from these companies to make it really obvious that we are collecting your text messages, we are collecting your phone calls, we are going to log this and log that, and just keep telling us in plain English and don't keep it hidden, because Facebook come back and defend their data collection by saying it adheres to their public privacy policy. But who has read that? And when you have things like this where ordinary people all of a sudden are told what's being stored, that there's outrage. And of course, there's something wrong when a company does that, when the outrage from the public doesn't match what the company is saying. So what we need is clearer guidelines, and we do need regulations, because people are unaware of how important this information is and how we can track people, and it can leave them vulnerable. And of course, that Facebook themselves will, in their guidelines to advertisers, will say that that use this context to be able to sell people and to exploit people's vulnerabilities when teenagers are feeling low. That they say they can do these categories so that they can really exploit us because they're using as much information as they can. So really, what we need to do is, moving forward, we need to have regulations. We need to have clearer guidelines for the public to say what information every company takes from us and what they do with that information.
Kevin, is this just the tip of the iceberg as far as what has been revealed now to the public? Do you think that there's much more that they know about us that we don't know about yet?
No, because they really couldn't have taken much more than they have taken. That they know the IP address we log in from. They know like a lot of companies, they know the phone that we're using. They know who we're connected to. They know our address. They know our emails. They know the ads that we click on. They know the likes that we do. Of course, the videos, the photos. And whenever you put a photograph up to Facebook as well, image recognition is used on that to be able to identify who's in the photograph. And of course, they'll say that that's to give them better context and everything else. So they really couldn't grab any more information than they have grabbed already, apart from listening into our private conversations. The phone was turned on, which they are not doing. I joke about that, but. Again, really, they couldn't grab any more information than they have. And they even go to third-party companies to get information that they can't get either. So they really are amassing a lot of information, of course, to be able to sell those context-relevant ads. Because before the likes of Google came along and Google requiring a login, and Facebook, of course, whenever you went to websites online, you were really anonymous. All you were was an IP address coming in. And, of course, if you logged into a site, that particular site knew who you are. But in the last 10 years, what's happened is, because we're now logged into the likes of Facebook and we're logged into Google, that they know who we are, that you're no longer just an anonymous IP address. You are a person. And then that person can be targeted with ads later. And, of course, the more that they can go to advertisers. And, again, that's where it all works. A car company come along, and the car company know their audience. They know that they want to sell ads to maybe someone who's male, who's in the age of 30 to 50, who owns their own house, who has an income of maybe 50,000 plus. Facebook are able to aggregate that data and pass on whatever it is, hundreds of thousands or millions of anonymous, of course, Facebook profiles to that company. And then that company can rest assured that they are only getting ads targeted to people who fit that profile, so that they're not wasting money. And that's why Facebook makes so much money. Like I said, they're expected to make $40 billion in revenue in ads online this year. Google and Facebook own 60% of the online revenue globally.
Right. So this new concept of targeted, advertising, which actually goes out to get, we want people who are married and who have a house, which costs like X amount, and have a car that costs X amount, and all of that. Without that information, I mean, how much value is a company like Facebook going to lose in terms of what they can sell their advertising for, and how much advertising they can sell?
I mean, at the moment we forget, at the moment Facebook's market capitalization is $460 billion, and they have $84 billion in assets. So there is this Delete Facebook campaign at the moment, but really, when any company has 2.1 billion users, and again, that Facebook own Instagram, which another 800 million, they own WhatsApp, which is 1.3 billion users. So even if millions were to leave in the next week or so, whatever, that's only a fraction of their user base, really, and advertisers. And advertisers, even if they get up in arms at the moment, will always go back to where the audience is. That, they can put on whatever outrage they have at the moment, but they will inevitably go back to where the people are. So, even in the modern world, not being on Facebook nowadays is like not having a cell phone, because that's where the reunions happen, that's where events happen, that's where information comes from, and until the negatives outweigh the positives, people will remain on that platform. Of course, that this is definitely they've lost a lot of their stock prices dipped this week, but they'll bounce back. They're too big to fail, Facebook, at the moment, really, and advertisers, right. Because this is not the first scandal. We've seen all the extremist videos online. We've seen all the fake news. We've seen everything hitting before. But because it's a dominant social network platform, and no one's going to come along and usurp it in my lifetime probably. That really, this is just another typical week in Facebook, and they'll respond to this, they'll get things right, but then something else will happen along the way. So really, at the moment, we'll only see a little dip, the slightest dip in their income in this quarter, really, and Facebook will resume being a giant of the internet.
Do you think that A, we're going to see more regulations, and B, that, even if we have regulations that say you must disclose, we all know how banks, and insurance companies and everybody else uses what's called small print, right? So I think that would that just be the same way? And even if it were in large print, would we say, okay, I'm not going to download your Messenger app?
Yeah, we will see more regulation, but again, it's not that. Really, it's the threat of fines. Again, coming in next year in the European Union is the GDPR, it's the General Data Protection Regulations, really. So this is really actually very good guidelines that forces companies to adhere to privacy policies, to make it explicit to users what they do with the data, to protect the data, and really that they can face large fines. And companies like Google, Facebook could face fines up to hundreds of millions of pounds, really. So that, and of course, behind the scenes at the moment, this comes in the 25th of May. Behind the scenes, Facebook and most companies actually are scrambling to try to adhere to this policy. So that will have a bearing on what they'll do in the future and how they treat our data. So that will definitely come into force. That will help us as the public, because it's there to protect us, really. It's there to protect the people who don't realize how valuable their data is and how they can be exposed later. But of course, even at the moment, it's not as if Facebook have done this in a vacuum, that they were signed up to a regulation called Privacy Shield, which was to enforce regulations of how U.S. companies treated European data. And of course, if you look at the guidelines there, Facebook broke all the regulations, really, in these cases. So they were signed up to a policy already, but it's not as if they adhere to it. So yes, regulation, unless it's got the power of fines behind it, really is just, it's just water for ducks back to someone like Facebook. So we really have to have the implications of fines coming in and those being enforced by especially the EU, and then that will really make sure that Facebook, pay more attention to what they're doing with our data.
Right. What do you think of the future of decentralized social networks? I mean, there's one called Steemit right now that's gaining a lot of steam, I guess. And could they possibly become a replacement when people get tired of, sharing their information? When you're decentralized, you don't have a corporation that is able to manipulate. You have the community, which can patrol you and can, I don't know, in the case of Steemit, they even reward you for content that's interesting or good. And they can also, I guess, punish you for by ignoring you or downvoting you, for content that's inferior. Do you think that's a possibility that we're going to be seeing that?
It's possible. It's very hard to break something like a social network where you have it's taken, 10, 11 years to get to this stage where people's friends are all on there. So it's very hard overnight to move to another social network. Not that it's impossible. If another social network too came along and people were able to export their data out of Facebook somehow and load it up there instantly, or else it was able to do it for people. It's possible that people will move over, but it's very, very slow. Yes, the geeks can move over in a day, but really what you have with something like Facebook is, people who are not technical, like mothers and grannies and aunts and uncles, and it's very hard to move them onto something which requires another login, another password, another way of using it. So it's very difficult. I mean, and again, we'll always have the problem of the data again, because again, the product is free. The reason it's free is because we're being sold ads, and again, the ads are being sold because they're mining as much information about it. So until we have a social network where you actually pay for it, and your payment really covers the cost of all the developers in the background, really, and then that you're not being targeted as obviously as you are now, then a social network like that might have a chance of getting around the privacy impacts that we're feeling now, the fake news aspect. But it's very hard, even for a decentralized network to come along and to do this. Technically, of course, they can do it, but really, in cases like a social network like this, you generally always come down to a centralized hub, because again, a decentralized network would also face the thing that really, when it comes to whose piece is it, who's going to agree on what extremist videos can be uploaded, what can be downloaded. it doesn't solve a lot of problems we have as a society at the moment about the content, really. Of course, as you say, there can be a voting mechanism, but it's not an obvious solution to the problem that we have right now.
Right. So what can we do then to protect ourselves since we're stuck with Facebook for now?
Again, it's just to be aware of what we share, really, and to figure out, is it worth, do the negatives outweigh the positives, or do the positives outweigh the negatives, really? But just when you're sharing, what we put up there, and to check, download, an obvious thing is to go there and to download what content Facebook have about you, to see what it is, how happy are you with that. To be aware when you're allowing other apps, again, third-party apps, access to your Facebook, that they can also share that and share it with third parties again. And again, just, to be aware that anything you like online can be used against you later, that, of course, that will lead to other, that in other words, we all live in a Facebook filter, really, that the ads that someone sees, that the post that someone sees on Facebook is not the post that someone else sees, again, that really that, again, and that's just like Google as well. When we log into somewhere like Google, that we don't see what other people see. We're seeing what Google think you're interested in, and Facebook are the same again. So just to
right,
just to
and
be aware
Amazon
that
is the same, and, right.
Yeah,
the only thing is that when you think about this, if a social network has all of this information, you just have to wonder, what do the governments have and what do the secret services have, and if they're how friendly they are with Facebook, despite Facebook having sort of official policies. But thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time to discuss that. Perhaps another time. I've been talking to Curran, Professor of Cybersecurity, Faculty of Computing and Engineering, Ulster University.
Tough questions are the most powerful weapon we have. As long as you have questions, we'll keep asking. Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
Radio Sputnik News.